Hello, my name is Connor Quinlan, and this is going to be a review on the new Nikon D3000 camera. It is Nikon's newest entry-level digital SLR. And in this video I'm not going to only be describing some of the new specs that it has to offer, but I'm also going to be comparing them to cameras like the Nikon D60 and the Nikon D5000. First thing I'm going to do is go over the new specs that it has to offer and kind of compare from there. So basically, the Nikon D3000 camera is like a Nikon D60 with a much better and faster autofocus system. It actually incorporates the autofocus system found in the Nikon D5000 and the Nikon D90. Instead of just having 3 points like the Nikon D60 has, the Nikon D3000 has an 11-point AF module, which is a lot faster, a lot more accurate, and actually also incorporates 3D tracking, something that the Nikon 60 cannot offer. Features like that are very good for action photography, sports, and maybe something simple like photographing your kids playing soccer or some sort of sport like that. Another thing that the Nikon D3000 has to offer, some more smaller features that it has to offer now, is a bigger LCD screen. The older Nikon D60 and Nikon D40 had a 2.5-inch LCD screen. Well, now the Nikon D3000 has a 3-inch LCD screen, which is a lot larger and is definitely a good upgrade to have on an entry-level digital SLR. Another interesting thing that's new in the Nikon D3000 is it has a completely unique mode called the guide mode. And what you do is you switch to the guide mode, and it basically puts you through an easy step-by-step way of controlling your camera. So now instead of just having an auto mode, you also have a guide mode, which will guide you through all the controls in the camera, which is definitely useful for those of you who will be moving up from a compact camera to a camera like that. Now you're also probably wondering, how does the image quality pair up to the Nikon D60? Well, since they're pretty much the exact same sensor, the image quality is not that much different. The Nikon D3000 pretty much matches it in sharpness and image quality. Of course, though, the Nikon D3000 might outperform it slightly in noise control, especially at higher ISOs, since it is a newer camera. However, remember that these improvements are just going to be slight improvements and probably not all that noticeable. Now I've compared it to the Nikon D60, but what about the Nikon D5000? Well, basically what I'm going to do now is name the features that the Nikon D5000 has over the Nikon D3000. First of all, the Nikon D5000 has full HD video mode. It can shoot at 720p. It also has a slightly faster frame rate. The Nikon D3000 has a 3 frame per second frame rate, whereas the Nikon D5000 can shoot at 4 frames per second. But that doesn't make much of a difference. The Nikon D5000 also has live view mode, which the Nikon D3000 still lacks. It also has a neat tilt swivel screen, which allows you to view the camera from different perspectives, and you can move the LCD screen in order to see it better from different perspectives. The Nikon D5000 incorporates more active D-lighting settings. It has auto, low, high, and extra high, whereas the Nikon D3000 only has an on and off mode. And the Nikon D5000 also incorporates chromal aberration control, which means that if you have a lens usually at the wider angle part of the lens, you get purple fringing on the outer edges of the picture. And what the Nikon D5000 does is it automatically gets rid of most of that. The Nikon D3000, however, will not do this. And then one other setting that the Nikon D5000 offers over the Nikon D3000 is the bracketing option, which the Nikon D3000 lacks. Now you get all those settings I mentioned and features of the Nikon D5000 for about $400 extra. The Nikon D3000 costs $600 with the kit lens, with the Nikon 18 to 55mm lens, whereas the Nikon D5000 costs almost $1,000 with that same kit lens. So really you should think over in your mind whether it's worth paying $400 extra for some of the features that the D5000 has over the D3000. Personally, I think that the Nikon D3000 is a much better bargain, considering that you get essentially the same things as the Nikon D5000 for $400 less in price. That's almost half the cost. Because in the end, the only real reason to get the Nikon D5000 would be for the video mode or for the tilt swivel screen. of course, that decision is completely up to you though. And when it comes to the Nikon D60, the Nikon D3000 for me wins hands down, because the Nikon D60 brand new almost costs exactly the same as the Nikon D3000 now. For me, the Nikon D3000 definitely replaces the Nikon D40 and the D60 as the new ultimate entry-level digital SLR. And the reason it does that for me is really the new autofocus mode. The autofocus in the Nikon D40 and the D60 was alright, but it wasn't very good for anything that came to action or movement. The new AF sensor module, though, is a lot better and performs really well when it comes to sports and action photography. So that's definitely a good thing, and that's why I would recommend the new Nikon D3000 as the ultimate entry-level digital SLR.